our natural right.
I have a question.
Yes.
You mentioned that the founding fathers said that men are able to obtain property, to do whatever he wants with it, sell it, trade it, destroy it, keep it. And then you said that the United States, America, was not set up to be a capitalist country. Can you explain that?
No, I didn't say that. I'm saying that America contradicted its founding principles of equality. Because when Congress confers special benefits on some, it simultaneously denies equal protection under law to all, right? So I'm saying that, well, I'm also saying that the first socialists in this country were the capitalists. The capitalists, a good part of them, ran to government for special favors, privileges, immunities, beginning with protective tariffs, but also subsidies for canals, turnpikes, which Congress was able to give because no one was there to stop Congress. If you read the speeches of Henry Clay or John Quincy Adams, as early as 1824, John Quincy Adams and Henry Clay were saying, government should do everything in its power to increase the wealth of the country. Liberty was not the gold standard, rather a pragmatic way to increase the prosperity of the country was a fit object of legislation. And so free market capitalism was violated and destroyed by a lot of capitalists who saw the advantage they would have from bribing congressmen, putting their own cronies into public office on the state level, on the federal level. American politics has been nothing but a tissue of corruption. Institutionalized theft on a national scale under cover of law. And that is as good a definition as American politics as I've come up with. Good job.
I served 21 years in the Navy Reserves, and I've always considered myself to be an anti-Marxist. However, after about 18 years in the military, it dawned on me, the United States military is a socialist system. I cannot choose my leaders. I cannot criticize my leaders.
That's right.
If I want to speak about the government, I can only quote biographical facts, and they must be positive. He has a wife and kids. Now, he was impeached. If it's true and it's negative, you can get in big trouble.
True.
Food, clothing, and shelter is provided for me. I can go to the bar, but I must leave the bar by 11 o'clock. You know, I mean, it is a very regimented socialist system in the United States military.
The military has to be that way.
Yeah.
Yes.
Right.
And it is inappropriate to label it as socialist because it is.
I wouldn't do that, but I'm really.
What makes the U.S. military different than the British military or the French? They're all the same.
It's the
I know.
same military.
So you can't pick on the U.S. military.
No, but just
Yeah,
it dawned on me that.
You're using a loaded term that I really don't think is appropriate because there is a functioning military service. And I forgot the expression, there had a chain of command, and you cannot have 1,000 soldiers going off in their own directions or criticizing
That's
anything
true.
and deciding what orders they'll obey and not obey. Yes?
My name is Malka. I came from Russia, and I can give you a better example to support the gentleman who delivered us message. Actually, I agree with people. In army, it's a different story. But you're so lucky you're born in the United States. You can choose to be in the army or go to somewhere else. You have freedom, you have opportunity. In military, it's a different system. I was born in a country named Soviet Union. I was a very successful psychologist. I spent 17 years to study. In my facility, my salary was per month $100. The lowest salary in same facility was the cleaning lady has $20 different. Her salary was $80. I was not allowed to open my private practice. We was under government control. I was not allowed to buy my apartment. I was not allowed to buy the car because it was a long, long climb. You know?
There's only one thing to say.
I was not allowed to travel.
Yeah.
Well, that was socialism.
I was not allowed to
Listen,
pay for my
if you ever
vehicle.
feel homesick, just wait a couple more years.
It was everybody must be equal. If you jump a little bit higher, they will cut your head.
Right.
Do you want this socialism?
I don't want to.
And look at her
No,
success story.
Control is on our side.
She's running for the New York State Assembly in the 47th Assembly District.
I'm so proud. I'm really appreciated. I love the United States because you give me opportunity, you give me welfare, you give me shelter, you give me place to live. Because all my colleagues who was with me, they unfortunately got killed murdered by government.
What's your last name, please?
Shahar,
And you're running for what?
for New York State Assembly.
Which neighborhood?
47.
47.
Which neighborhood?
Benson.
Benson.
Nearby. I have a,
Rally with me.
Yes, she was at the rally.
He's very
And I just did surgery, knee replacement. You see,
Hold on
I'm a
one
fighter.
I wanted to touch upon this. I've been paying attention to this stuff since I was a kid for many years, I think just like you guys were. And one of the biggest problems we have in this country, unfortunately, is the government schools. And not necessarily just the private schools. Private schools are a lot better in many ways. Government schools have dumbed a lot of people down
Yes, it has, yeah.
for the last 4 or 5 generations. And even when I was going to school back in the 80s and 90s, I remember there wasn't enough civics courses being given. I had to do a lot of that stuff on my own to even find out how Congress worked and how the judiciary branch worked and the executive branch, all sorts of things. Basic things that someone who's an undergrad today should realize and understand. Very basic principles. If you cannot change that, and you've got people expecting corporate or free things, and they don't realize that this is not what this republic is founded about, then how are you going to be able to get someone like this young lady here elected, and even Donald Trump? And if you look at the polls today, it's outrageous. Look, you even touched upon New York State being in terrible condition. Well, a certain woman senator back in the early 2000s went on a listening tour. Now, why is it that, PACs and other agencies aren't saying, she went on this listening tour, look at the state of what she represented. They said, all that was a stepping stone. And I told folks back then, this is all it's going to be. She has no qualifications, just coming from Illinois and then Arkansas. Just a stepping stone for her, just kind of like Bobby Kennedy. But the root of my question here is the education system in this country and what we're dealing with. When I speak to people today that are supposed to be a little older and enlightened, they don't have a clue.
Let me
That's a
give
big
you a
problem.
little encouragement. Your concern is entirely well taken. If public schools are to continue the way they are for another generation or two, no one will recognize the word Jefferson. No one will recognize the word Madison. It will have no significance whatsoever. And every complaint against America and every atrocity America committed is the only things that will be studied. That would be very dangerous. However, a country, like an animal, rots from the top. The top, in our case, is the Ivy League universities. That's where the rot begins. Harvard, Yale, Columbia, on and on and on.
Also,
Now, listen.
universities.
Hold on one second.
Now, in other words, it is the university professors on the Ivy League who write the major books that train the professors in the community colleges, that teach the next generation of teachers and judges and movie producers and directors and poets, so that it all stems from the top, which has been disseminating socialism, pragmatism, and defeating and undermining the principles on which the country was founded, and they've been doing that for a long time. However, if you watched any part of CPAC last February, March, whenever it was, you saw 10,000 young college-age people devoted to the founding principles. devoted to conservatism or libertarianism or even objectivism, the philosophy of Ayn Rand. These are people who are entering the university system now throughout the country. They are forming organizations like Students for Liberty, Young Americans for Liberty, the Federalist Society, on and on. These people are on our side and preserving the cultural traditions that made America great in the
I just
first
wanted to
place.
touch upon this as well.
And they will teach the next generation of young people. And the socialists are a spent force. Of course, socialism has proven itself a failure wherever it has been tried. And these people understand the Austrian economics of Ludwig von Mises, of Friedrich Hayek, of Milton Friedman in the Chicago School, and they are carrying on and building a tradition of free market and liberty, and so it is not lost by any stretch. The only other thing is, all of the millions of Americans who are apathetic, the silent majority, the low information voters who are now coming out en masse because they can't do otherwise, supporting Donald Trump.
Another
So the
thing I
game
wanted to
isn't
touch
over.
upon that is, don't forget, there's also alternative media today. You have YouTube, there's a Milo Yiannopoulos that's on there,
Yeah.
and you also have Stefan Molyneux and several other brilliant people that you're getting beyond just also Twitter and the Facebook thing, as well as the
Yeah.
cable TV. I mean, I don't know a lot of people, younger people especially today, that listen to talk radio or watch the cable TV outlets. So you have a lot of other alternative media.
There are a lot of Rush babies in the world.
So am
I'm one.
I was a teenager when I was young.
Okay, so in other words, it is not time to give up or surrender.
But he's not the only one. He gets maybe a very tiny percentage of people. Very tiny percentage.
it's
And it's shrinking. It's shrinking, the truck radio thing. It's gonna go away.
Okay.
Jerome, I'm not sure, I stepped out for a second. Did you mention your background? Whatever?
No. I was a former assistant professor at Seton Hall University, where I taught, my PhD is in political science. My doctoral dissertation was on the founding era and resulted in the book Lock in America that came out. And my other book, and promoting the case that I presented today, is called Everything You Have, the Case Against Welfare. And some of you may remember that Everything You Have was inspired by Gerald Ford, who in a debate with Jimmy Carter in 1976 said, a government that is big enough to give you anything you want is big enough to take everything you have. I was listening to that debate that time in '76. My eyes just widened, I bolted up, and I said, I gotta write that down, and it became the title of my book.
Doctor, that wasn't his original quote, right? He's quoting Jefferson or somebody, wasn't he?
No, I have never found Jefferson saying that, and it seems not a context that Jefferson would say, government big enough to give you anything you want. The government was just debating a national bank and tariff legislation, not the entire social
Do you think
interest.
that's
I think that would.
You think the original quote of Ford's then?
I believe, no, I believe it's an original quote of the speechwriter for Ford. Whoever wasn't prepared for that debate.
Not that well.
I'm sorry, okay.
Okay, so I made some notes while you were making your remarks. I'd like you to just clarify a few things. You said that Donald Trump was not the answer, and I agree that he's not a perfect conservative, but he's pushing back against the establishment, and a lot of his policies, if he would do just half of what he promises, the country would be left way better off than what it is now.
Yeah, but look what you're comparing it to, what it is now, and that is very dangerous. I will gladly go into the voting booth and pull the lever or whatever they make me do for Donald Trump without any compunction whatsoever. I will say this on Trump's behalf. There are positions that he takes that I believe he is 100% serious about. He is a man who gets things done. That's his entire history. And much of what he wants to do desperately needs doing, like building up national defense, like putting the world on notice, you do not screw with this country anymore. It stops now. I don't agree with his trade policy at all. That is the most dangerous part of his platform.
What's wrong with asking for some fairness, some reciprocity?
There is something to that, but trade deals just enable companies to go overseas. It is the tax burden, is the cost of complying with never-ending regulations and legal fees and judges' determinations that is what's pushing them overseas and costing so many jobs. All that needs to be done is a dramatic reduction in spending, which will enable a dramatic reduction in taxes, get government out of the pockets and off of the backs of the American people, and the trade deals can be what they may.
Okay, so you reject tax
But, and also,
in your speech?
yes, I do.
But you are in favor of income taxes?
Uh,
Because government has to have some money.
Yeah,
even
okay,
limited government.
here is the principle. Government may tax us, but only as much as it costs to protect us. In other words, as long as government is doing what we need government to do, yes, stealth fighters and nuclear-class submarines do not grow on trees. Government requires the resources to pay for the servicemen and the M1 rifles and everything our national defense
Do you
depends
feel
on.
that income tax is the way to fund those necessary government functions,
Yes,
Really?
rather than the tariff?
yes.
So what are our sales tax? What are national sales tax?
A national sales tax, it's the idea of how government is gonna raise its money. I'm willing to debate, I'm willing to listen to alternatives to the income tax. It's not a fundamental principle, as long as government is confined to doing what we need government to do. Then the sums of money it needs to raise are so minuscule that it doesn't matter the method of raising it.
And the other thing is the government monopoly on the use of force, which you had mentioned early on. What about what our Constitution affords us, the Second Amendment, and that is to fight our tyrannical government or to protect ourselves and our family and our property?
Absolutely, absolutely.
You're on board.
Absolutely. Everyone who has ever studied the subject of politics knows that there is nothing more dangerous to the liberty of the people than government. And everyone reserves the right to defend themselves, because a cop isn't, tailing me every minute to intercede if someone tries to accost me or assault me.
How do you explain your statement that government has a monopoly on the use of force?
That's a good question. It has, because we are not allowed to use force, with the only exception being in self-defense, in order to protect ourselves against someone who is violating our rights. If we cannot call a cop, if we cannot call the infantry or National Guard or whatever, the moment that we are assaulted, of course we have a right to defend ourselves, and we need the means to do that. I am foursquare with John Lott, who believes that more guns mean less crime. I am 100% in favor of allowing anyone short of criminals and psychologically impaired of being allowed to possess whatever weapons they please, with the understanding that everyone is responsible for their actions and will be held accountable for any misuse of their weapons.
Questions?
This gentleman is
Yes.
asking for.
Yes.
Professor, first I wanted to make a little comment about your education comments. Well, the public does not have any understanding of who the founding fathers are. They know the names Jefferson and Madison, etc., from the names of the schools that they attended. That's as a joke. Second, and this is a serious thing, okay, and this is a serious thing.
That's true.
I'm very, very concerned about this issue. When you're talking about cuts in government service, cuts in government employees, I agree with you in theory 100% with this, and I do tend to lean towards a libertarian philosophy in a very large extent. My one concern with it is that if we suddenly start to phase out government, let's use the word welfare services, support services, beneficial services, whatever they are, you are going to create a massive condition of unemployment in this country, because it seems to me, from my perspective, there are probably something like 5 out of 10 people, if not more, across this country in one way or another, are presently working for the government. And that frightens me.